Welcome to the Coaching Summit 2025, this year with a theme of diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging, and brought to you by In Good Company, a global coaching training organisation bringing you coaching qualifications and ongoing CPD for coaches. If you're inspired to continue your learning, then be sure to check out our website at igcompany.co.uk. But for now, we invite you to sit back and enjoy the amazing lineup that we have for you today from our expert speakers who all share a passion for our theme of diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging. Enjoy! Welcome, and you guys are the ones flying the flag for diversity, equity and inclusion today. And please do spread the word amongst your colleagues and peers as we move throughout the day. So it's lovely to be here again this year. We've had summits previously, and for those of you who you're here and registered today, when you get the recordings of this year's summit, you'll also be able to access previous year's summit. So the learning can continue for many weeks and months ahead if that is something that you want to do. But I am here to introduce Gwen to you, and Gwen is kicking off our summit this morning, and she is a notable neurodivergent. And she's dynamic and definitely not typical. These are her own words, so I'm allowed to say that. Gwen's a coach. She's a coaching supervisor, a therapist, a corporate speaker and consultant. And she's been working with us over the past year, helping us to shape our neurodivergent inclusive coaching program. And she spent 25 years, a really long career, helping people to understand neurodivergence. And how it is a different way of thriving. So you're in for an absolute treat today. So she's the founder of Not So Typical and the co-creator of our neurodivergent inclusive coaching program, as I've shared. So she is a maverick in the DEIB space. And today she's here to shake up how we think about brains, brilliance and belonging. And she's going to take us through a wonderful session on what is neurodivergent inclusive coaching. So Gwen, over to you.
Thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and let you know that I am slow at this, so it always takes a minute because I am Luddite. But thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for prioritizing neurodivergence in your day. This is a space that's getting a lot of attention, sometimes accurate attention, sometimes not, but it's definitely a place where certainly at In Good Company, we've said that we feel it should be required training for coaches. It should be something that we're all paying attention to because it's 15 to 20% of the world that we're talking about with neurodivergence, right? So if we're coaches, then we need to figure out how can we be neurodivergent inclusive coaches. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping real quick and remind everyone to go ahet and put yourselves on mute. We are hearing just a couple of people in the background. Zoe, I went ahead and made you host so you can ask them to mute, but yeah.
Yes.
I would like this to be an active chat. I'd like to get us all going. So just to start out with, let me know why you're here. Let me know what you're interested in. What made you say that I want to spend 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning with Gwen to find out about neurodivergence? I'm interested. I always love to hear and I love to know. Before we get started though, first thing is that this is a neurodivergent inclusive space. So what does that mean? It means all of your AI note takers are more than welcome here. We've approved them all. It means that if you need to stim to your little heart's content. You'll probably see me stimming. I can't sit still to save my life. So you'll see me twisting. You might see me playing with my bracelets. You might see, all sorts of things for my stim. But for you, if you need to get up and walk around, if you want to come back and forth, that's great. Ask as many questions as you want in the chat, and Zoe is amazingly going to help moderate that for us. It also means if you want cameras on, cameras off, whatever you need, this is a space for you and for your learning, because that's what being neurodivergent is all about, right? How do we thrive in this space? For those of you who don't know me, I am Gwen Jones, the notable neurodivergent, mainly because I love alliteration. So I started my career with a bachelor's degree in psychology and then got a PG cert in teaching. And I taught the kids who were considered behavior disordered, emotionally disturbed, and at risk for sociopathy. Wonderful labels to give a 7-year-old. But basically, the way that it was talked about is all the kids that could not succeed in typical classrooms would get sent down the hall to Gwen's room. And we would have specialized teaching and specialized ways of working with these kiddos so that they could find a way for them to thrive. Um, After 9 years of teaching, both in the United States and in the United Kingdom, I realized I wasn't so into the reading and the math side of things, but I was fascinated by relationships. So how do we relate to, sure, our partners, right? But also how do we relate to our children and our parents and the different systems that we're a part of? How do we relate to ourselves? So I retrained as a psychotherapist. I got a master's degree in occupational psychology because I'm fascinated by how we show up in the workplace. I'm a PCC coach, coaching supervisor, therapist, corporate speaker. I'm the wife of an autistic man. I am the mother of 4 neurodivergent children. As I said, I'm neurodivergent myself. I'm ADHD, which means I'm autistic, ADHD, and I'm also dyspraxic, and I'm twice exceptional. And so the standard joke at our house is we love to ask neurotypical people, what's that like? Being neurotypical, do you really just have one thought at a time, like for an extended period of time? That, like, what does that mean to clear your mind? We ask all these questions because different questions get asked to us in a similar way, but it is fascinating to understand how other people show up. And my proudest moment in my professional career is to be the co-creator of the Neurodivergent Inclusive Coaching Program within Good Company. This is a 40 CCE program that I developed with Joe and Zoe, and it's just I'm so proud of it. When we developed this program, I went into it with them and I said, look, the people that are coming out of this program are going to be coaching my kids, and I'm going to be damn sure that they're going to come out of here knowing how to be neurodivergent affirmative. And that's kind of the lens with which I took as I was co-creating this program. So in this session, what are we going to cover? It's a short session, so I do not expect you to come away with a full understanding of how to be a neurodivergent inclusive coach, but I do want you to come away with some really important information. So what does it mean to be a neurodivergent inclusive coach? I'm going to introduce you to the zebra model, which is something that that we created to kind of help be a framework for you to say, am I doing right by my neurodivergent clients? Am I doing this in a way that I should be doing, that I want to be doing, and that they can help? And of course, we're going to have time for Q&A. So Zoe, is there anything in the chat that's worth looking at, that's worth having a mention of, why people are here, what they're looking for?
There is so much in the chat, Gwen. Lots of people sharing that they've recently been diagnosed themselves or that they are neurodivergent themselves. Lots of people sharing how they're keen to make their practice more inclusive and really just understanding more about the world of neurodivergent coaching. So let's see what you've got.
I love it. Love it. So I am going to ask you some questions throughout this, and you might want to write something down and you might want to think about it, but have a think about it and be honest with yourself, because some of the questions I ask might be challenging for you. And I hope they are, because I'm a maverick. I like to shake things up a bit. So this is, no one's going to come check your homework here. Have a real check-in with yourself about what you might know now, what you want to learn, and what you've learned by the end of this. So what is neurodivergence? It refers to natural variations in the human brain and the nervous system. What I like to say about this is that people say, why are there so many neurodivergent people nowadays? Y'all, we have always been here. We've since the beginning of time, we've had those, kind of quirky folks in the fringes, helping to drive forward technology, showing up in different ways. It's just we're starting to have a voice, B, feel safe enough to show up, and C, be accommodated and valued within the world. It includes many different conditions. And what I want to say about conditions is sometimes you're diagnosed and sometimes you're self-identified. Both things are okay. We do not require membership cards in the neurodivergent community. So if you are self-identified, that's good enough for us. That's good enough to know that that you deserve help and support. It's also a difference in someone and how someone thinks, how they learn, how they process, and how they experience the world. When we talk about things like the spectrum is not all inclusive of everyone. I think there's some misnomers out there about that. What the spectrum is there is a spectrum of traits, for example, for autistic people, that autistic people have a tendency to share. Not every autistic person has every autistic trait, and yet they share within that spectrum. If you are not autistic, you cannot be a little bit on the spectrum. It's kind of like being pregnant. You can't be a little bit pregnant. You can't be a little bit autistic. And more than anything, neurodivergence is about identity as much as, if not more than function. Function is all about, we have this neurotypical standard for the way we expect people to show up in the world. So how well are you able to kind of fit inside that? But identity is about, this is who I am when the doors are closed and the lights are off, and I'm able to just sit and be one with myself and the world around me. My neurodivergence is a part of that identity, as much as being an American, as much as being an immigrant, as much as being a mother, as much as being a woman. My neurodivergence is a part of that. So, why does inclusion matter in coaching? Because what I hear from a lot of coaches is, but isn't coaching always specialist? Isn't coaching always about the client? I'm going to give you a yes and here. So yes, this is good coaching practice to be a neurodivergent inclusive. It does bring in good coaching practice. And there has to be a specialist understanding of the neurodivergent brain, the neurodivergent experience of the world, in order to truly show up as an inclusive coach, because neurodivergent coachees are often misunderstood or underserved. So they're going to come to you with this long history of things like educational, social, and systemic trauma, of having to hide themselves, of having to code switch, of having to pass. ADHD children experience 10,000 more negative comments by the time they're 10 than their neurodivergent peers. Now imagine how that statistic explodes when they become teenagers and they're obnoxious, saying that as the mother of 4 teenagers. Imagine how much that just grows and grows and grows. So they're going to come to you with this idea of mistrust. They might have had missed potential. There might have been harm. Standard coaching is fantastic. Okay. So your core training and your core coaching is great. And it was made for the middle. It was made for the neurotypical, for the average brain, because it should be, right? Most things are. We're trying to serve a population. It accidentally excluded neurodivergent people. So it's just not meeting those diverse access needs. Inclusion is an ethical, essential, and effective process. We have things like the Equalities Act of 2010, the Americans with Disabilities Act. There's all these different acts that have been put into place in many different countries around the world that says accessibility is not a really nice thing to have. It is a right as much as any other right. So neurodivergent inclusion benefits all coaches, because what happens is, when you start to frame people with a neurodivergent inclusive lens, you start to ask a different set of questions. So those questions can lead to things that help neurotypical coaches as much as neurodivergent coaches, but we're wanting to broaden that lens and to allow accessibility for neurodivergent people. So I want you to answer in the chat if you're brave. Zoe, maybe you can answer, and maybe you're like pre-neurodivergent awareness self can answer this. How were you taught to identify states like when my client is calm? What do you think? How do you know as a coach that your client is calm?
We'll just give a couple of minutes for them to come through. Yep, they're starting to come now. So sitting still, body language or tone, breathing patterns, vocal tone, relaxed body language, what you see and hear, their language, micro energy, pace of speech.
Yep.
Someone's saying, I don't rely on body language, something that's pen, I ask, not fidgeting when they tell me, body language, only speak when spoken to,
Yeah.
the way I sense about his or her feeling, asking. So lots of variety, and they're still coming through. So it's all
Yeah.
popping. And they tell me when they're not distressed. No heavy
Yeah.
thinking.
Maybe the idea of also when is pause? What does pause give you as a coach when you pause and you allow silence in the coaching space? We talk about make the pause. I mean, I do it, as a facilitator on our ILM course. I'm like, adding more pause will allow what? What does it give? Deeper reflection. Yeah.
Yeah,
Think
thinking
all.
space,
Mhm.
co-regulation, thinking time, my own thinking as well as that for my client.
Sure. So all of this is good coaching practice, right? But let's think about it through the lens of one of my clients who's allowed me to share her experience. She came in for her third session, and we were talking about doing not quite a meditation, but a visualization exercise. And she's like, "Oh, I can't do those." And I said, "Why can't you do those?" And she's like, "Because I can't sit still. I need to stim if I'm going to listen. And to have to sit still, it hurts my body to hold my body still. And then I completely lose track of what you're saying, and I can't think about it. So I can't do that." And I said, "Who told you you had to sit still while you're doing a visualization?" She's like, "What?" Now, this is someone who is a big, big stimmer. Like, she rocks, she rubs her arms, she's got stim rings. And when she was able to be calm, but not still, she was able to connect with that coaching exercise and be able to connect with all sorts of visualization and meditation techniques when someone finally told her, "Hey, guess what? You don't have to do this the same way as everybody else." I could tell when she was connected because she was nodding a lot and really kind of moving her body at a certain pace. She had a happy stim. Pause was something that we had to contract for because I would sit there. I sat there in the beginning and we had kind of a pause. And then she goes, "Am I supposed to be talking?" Because she was confused by the pause. She didn't get what I meant. Like, she's like, did I miss something? Because pause was not a space for reflection with her unless she had a moment or she had permission or she had an agreement between us. It had to be stated because pause meant nothing to her until it was given a meaning. So what I was doing when I was pausing was good coaching. It just wasn't good coaching for her. So when we think about neurodivergent inclusive people, let's talk about where traditional coaching can fall short. It's that square peg in a round hole, right? First of all, it assumes verbal processing equals insight. Now, as a verbal processor, poor Zoe knows this when she's had to pause me in meetings before, and we contracted for this. I can talk for days. You want me to sit and talk at you for an hour? Okay. What do you want to talk about? I'll talk about anything, but it doesn't mean that anything is coming from my verbal processing. Sometimes it does when I'm doing it with intent, but sometimes I can spin out into all sorts of different places. The insight for me comes from bullet points, from, okay, what my coaches do well, what Zoe does well. I love getting emails from Zoe because she's like, "Here's what we talked about. Here's the bullet points." um, I need to know, I've thrown a lot of words at you. What are the things that I need to get from this? And I need help. My coach will say, "Great, you said all that. Now, where are we? What have you got from that?" Um, it often misinterprets traits as resistance. So you might find someone who you feel like is trying to debate with you because of their communication style, or someone who says, "Yeah, I'm going to do it." And they make all this commitment. And then they come back in the next session and they've done nothing. Sometimes we focus on that goal because that's coaching, right? We're goal focused. That's what we do. But when we focus on the goal without exploring access needs, you're going to say that my traits are resistant because I'm not doing the thing. But the truth is, I can set a goal, but what I need you to do is sit with me and take it a few steps further with that goal to make it so that I can have the buy-in for it. It risks reinforcing internalized and externalized ableisms. The shoulds come out big time with your neurodivergent coachees. I should be able to do this. I know I can do this. I've done it before. I don't know what's wrong with me. I should. And I'm like, stop shoulding everywhere. Can we just like let's remove that. Let's see who's telling you that. Where is this voice coming from about what you should do, about how you should be? Even think about my coachee and how she should be in a meditation. And it neglects learning their clients' language. Now, I have 4 autistic children, and the one thing that they hate more than anything is idioms, idioms and metaphors. So let's talk about these. And you can give me your response in the chat. So what do you hear? What do you think this means to take ownership and give 110%? What does that mean? Take ownership and give 110%.
So we'll just give you a couple of seconds there to capture. So
Oh,
someone's sharing, no idea, bad maths.
yeah, that's
Another
the first.
sharing,
Yeah.
giving more than you can,
Mhm.
commitment to the goal, something about pressure. Sorry, they're coming thick and fast now.
No matter
That's
what I'm
Uh,
fine.
looking at.
drop everything and go for it 24/7. Go over and above in your efforts.
We're looking at a computer monitor displaying a
Oh,
presentation slide.
oh, I'm going to ask y'all to check and
Read
make sure
more.
that you're on mute.
Right, I'm going to mute everybody, Gwen, but it might
This appears
mute
to be
you
a
and
slide
me.
from a
Okay.
presentation titled
Okay.
Unmuted.
There we go.
Yeah.
Be fully dedicated. Do your best, but not your actual best, some sort of almost best. You didn't own it and you're underperforming. So there's lots of different interpretations. You can see some shame coming through in some of the answers as well. So yeah, share with us your...
Yeah, the bad maths is the first. You can't give 110%. That's ridiculous unless you're, I mean, like my math children, engineering brain children, you can imagine, right? And take ownership. What does that mean? I've heard from clients, take ownership. Okay, that means that I'm not allowed to ask for help or support because it's mine and I have to take ownership of it. There's no definition there. Good things come to those who wait. That's another one. What does that mean to you?
Let's have a look. What's going to come through on this one? You need patience. You have to have patience. No, they don't. You have to go and get them. Be a good girl. Take no action and wait for your dreams to come true. How long do I need to wait? Someone asked.
Thank you. Thank you. That was always the one that came up for me. Shut the F up. Yeah, I love that one. Here's one that came up actually recently for my son. He's doing his year in industry, and he got asked the question, why do you want this job? And y'all, you know what his answer was? Well, because I want some money. Like, why else would I be working? He doesn't understand what is, like, it makes no sense to ask that, why do you want this job? He's like, why does anybody want a job? Because it's what you're supposed to do. It's such a random question. You can see how you can offer help and support for people in coaching with when they're looking at getting new jobs. Why do you want this job? What? What do you think? Right? Am I supposed to be nice to you? Am I supposed to kiss up to you? What am I supposed to do with that one? And then I'm going to give you this one. Okay, tell me what you think this means. We can't both be on fire at the same time.
No idea.
Yes.
Someone sharing. Yeah. Calm down. No clue.
Yeah. So here's why I shared this one. This is actually an idiom just for my family, where we were having a big family discussion, and my son was zoning out. And when he zones out, he kind of goes and plays this video game in his head. And I went, right, Drake? And he goes, we can't both be on fire at the same time. And we're all like, what? So in our house, this means pay attention. But you can see how I expected you to have this awareness of what does it mean to say we can't both be on fire at the same time. And you're like, that experience is a communication barrier for many neurodivergent people, either because they're spitting out 100 different things that it could be, or there's an expectation that they haven't quite got. You can see how learning to communicate and learning to communicate in a way that supports your neurodivergent coachee is so incredibly important, because we can't both be on fire at the same time, right? We have to pay attention. So ask yourself this: how can I coach clients and coachees who have brains that need different support than my core training taught me about? Think about that. What comes up for you? Because this is a question I get whenever I talk about our neurodivergent inclusive coaching program. This is what people ask me. How can I do this? How can I show up for them? This is what I was taught in core training, but I don't know. And again, this is not because your core training was wrong. It's just because, we got so many weeks, and this is a development. This is a responsibility. And honestly, it's an awareness that's coming into the world. 5 years ago, I was doing seminars in corporates like, have you heard of this term neurodivergent? There's this thing. Have you heard about it? Do you know what this is? And think about how far we've come in the past 5 years since you know, from COVID onwards, think about how far we've come just in society and our awareness of people showing up differently and being successful. So how do we do this? Well, let me show you. I want you first of all to think about one of my favorite things, and this is the zebra metaphor. So imagine spending time, your whole life even, feeling like a really strange horse. You're always falling short of other people's expectations. You're compared to other horses. Maybe you're too small. You're kind of weird looking. You internalize society's beliefs about horse-like characteristics that make you beautiful and successful and worthy. You try so hard to be horse-like, right? But you appear awkward and false. And at the end of the day, you're exhausted from being as horsey as possible, and you have nothing left. Then one day, you discover that you're actually a zebra. You aren't supposed to meet some arbitrary standard of horsiness, right? You begin unhorsing yourself, and it's a long and sometimes really difficult process. And you slowly start to embrace your stripes and your voice, and you decide that you deserve to show up authentically. This metaphor is all about capturing that experience of many neurodivergent individuals. And whether it's diagnosis or self-identification, it brings clarity. It replaces feelings of failure. It brings about an understanding of identity that leads to self-acceptance and growth. And so because of that, and because we're a little bit weird and wonderful here In Good Company, we have developed for you the zebra model. So how do I show up as a neurodivergent inclusive coach? Oops. First of all, we don't hit the space bar before we need to, but we look at these 5 areas. First of all, creating a zone of safety. So remembering, first of all, that zone of safety is part me and part my coachee. Everything is about partnering, right? And I might create the safest environment in the world, but my coachee needs to buy into it. So together, we're going to figure out how can you feel safe to be your authentic self in this space. We're going to talk about elevating strengths, and these are not the strengths that they think they should elevate, and they might be, but we're letting them set the standards for that. What are their strengths? How do they show up? What makes them special? I steer away from superpower language because it's only a superpower because you're able to kind of do it based on neurotypical comparisons, but what makes you thrive? Why do people want you in their space? What makes you a part of your team, and that you bring something that no one else does? We're going to build empowering practices. I am not going to ask you to fit into a framework or a tool that is not designed for your brain or your success. When we start trying to force our coachees into the tool, then we're coaching the tool. We're not coaching the coachee anymore. So what practices work for you? You need to do things 8 times. Great. Let's see how we can make the number 8 work for you. You need to have, color-coded lists. Great. Let's do that. We're going to reimagine success. And this is one that people really don't think about, because people assume that success is across the board. It's not necessarily true. What does success look like for you? How do you like to celebrate your success? How do you internalize success? How can you define that you know that you have reached something that you can feel successful? And finally, and across all of this, it's about aligning with flexibility. So you need to stand up and pace. Great, stand up and pace. You need to, I have a box of, if I were in my office, I have a box of fidget toys and stim toys in my room because people like to pull and stim and do all that sort of stuff. Great, we can do that. You need to, do voice notes at the end of our session because it helps you remember what your goals are and what the plan is. Sure, we can do that. It's just being flexible within your boundaries and within your coachee's boundaries so that they can align what they need to do with success. So I'm going to ask you to ask yourself, and maybe share in the chat, what is one action I can take today to better support my neurodivergent clients? And I'm asking it this way because you've got them whether you know it or not, whether they know it or not. If you are seeing, say, 10 clients, the likelihood is that at least 2 of them have a neurodivergence that they may or may not be aware of. So what is one action you can take today to better support your neurodivergent clients? What are we seeing, Zoe? Is it coming up in the chat?
Yeah, they're just starting to come through. Really humbling to see. So we've got don't assume. So keep learning and adapting. build access needs into contracting. Don't assume that my understanding of navigating the world as an ND woman will be anywhere near as similar to theirs. Even more co-creation, Zebra for a team coaching session that I have, which is great to see, Claire. Be open-minded and curious. Ask them what they need, whether they need any adjustments or need me to show up differently. And there's more still coming. So lots about asking and not assuming and staying curious.
Oh, I love to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm going to go ahead and share this slide because it's time for questions and answers, and I want to make sure we have time for that. If you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is really the only place, that's a word, the only space that I show up for my work, and so you can connect with me there. But we do have an offering for you from In Good Company. On Thursday, we are going to have a Q&A about neurodivergent inclusive coaching. What is our neurodivergent inclusive coaching program? Is it right for you? Is it something, do you have things that you want to know about that? All of that. So if you would like to be a part of that, you can scan the second QR code there. But other than that, if you'd like to put your questions in the chat, then Zoe can read them to me.
Yes, absolutely. And you'll also have an email from us after the summit with the dates and times of those Q&A sessions as well. So we had a couple of questions come through as you were talking, Gwen, so I'm going to circle back to those. And forgive me if I haven't captured your names against these questions, but somebody shared, could you explain more about the binary nature of neurodivergence? So you said you either are or you aren't, and someone just said, could you clarify that and help to bring that to life a bit more?
Yeah, so this specificity comes from kind of ableist language that's been out there. So ableism is what happens when you're discriminating against somebody with neurodivergence, and usually from a microaggression as well, where people would say things like, "Oh, I'm a little bit ADHD today because I can't find my keys," and I'm like, that does not make you ADHD. That means that you're forgetful. You might have traits that you that are similar to, here and there, but it doesn't mean that you have the lived experience of a neurodivergent person. The best example I have of this is my son was taking a PSHE lesson, and his well-intentioned teacher said, so I guess everybody's a little bit autistic. And my little autistic boy turned on his mic and his camera, and he said, I just want to check in with you, because when you say everyone's a little bit autistic, what you're saying is everyone has a lot of the behaviors that you find annoying in me. And my autism is a lot more than that. You're not talking about how I have a specialist interest that I can be an expert on. You're not talking about how I have the ability to see patterns in a way that no one else can. And so it's really insulting to me when you say everyone's a little bit autistic. So when it comes to being neurodivergent, we're not having a neurodivergent day. It's something that I carry with me all the time, and that comes with me. It's honestly my proudest mama moment of his whole life, is him being able to do that. But we talk about it in a binary way, so that we are not saying, well, I'm not as bad as, or at least I'm not them. It's a way of saying all neurodivergent people have an experience that deserves to be accommodated.
Thanks, Gwen. And I know from my previous experiences, a lot of those comments often come because they're trying to be inclusive. So it often comes from a good place, just not an informed place.
Exactly.
So there was another question. Could you share more about what you mean around helping a client to get buy-in around their goals? So I think you shared that a client may set a goal, and that's a thing that they're able to do, but you may need to go further and help them to get buy-in to the goal that they have set.
Yeah, so people, especially in the workplace, neurodivergent people are really good at doing what they think other people think they should do, right? So I might come to coaching and you help me form a goal because I think it's the goal that you want. And I will nod my head and say, yes, I will do that. And I probably even mean it at the time. But because I don't have an attachment to that goal, because I'm doing it for you, or I'm doing it for what I think somebody wants me to do, or my boss wants me to do, or what I think I should be doing, I'm not going to follow through on it. It's not going to mean anything to me. And so I'll come to the next session and be like, oh, I'm sorry. And it's always, I was really busy, right? I was so busy that I couldn't think of 3 things at the end of my day to write in my gratitude journal, for example. And what it might be, what something like that might be a sign of for neurodivergent people is that doesn't mean anything to them. It doesn't matter to them. We need to make sure that we're saying, when we're doing the partnering, are you doing, are you masking? Are you doing the behavior that you think you should be doing? And does this really matter for you? And when we create that zone of safety, part of what we're doing is saying, I know you've been sent here for leadership coaching, right? But maybe you don't want to be a leader, and that's okay. I don't have to do leadership goals with you. If you want to do other goals, I might need to look at my tripartite agreement and see what's going on with that. But if you're doing this because other people think you should be, why are you really here? And how can you get what you want out of the time that we spend together?
Thanks, Gwen. There's a lot of questions. I don't think we'll have time for them all, so I will do my best to pick some out. So I'm a clean language coach. Do metaphors work with the ND client if they come up with their own?
So yes, that was going to be the answer. If the client comes up with a metaphor that works for them and it's their metaphor, then yes. If I'm using an idiom or a metaphor that I think everybody knows, it's like when I come to the UK and I say, oh, you knocked that out of the park. That's a baseball analogy. That's an American thing. Not everybody gets that. And working with an analogy that they have no attachment to doesn't work. But if you worked with somebody in my house around, you can't both be on fire at the same time, you could do a lot of clean language with that. So yeah, it needs to come from the client. That's the trick.
So I have a great question here from Irene. Is part of our focus when supporting neurodivergent clients to help them to navigate a neurotypical focused world?
So what we're doing is we're working within the systems that a person lives, right? We are not trying to make them neurotypical. We are not doing conversion therapy here, right? That's not what we want. However, it would be irresponsible to neglect the fact that they are living in a world that's not designed for them. So what we're saying is, with coaching, how can we remove obstacles, identify and remove obstacles from your way so that you have the ability to access the world with as few obstacles and limitations as possible put there because it's designed for somebody else. How can coaching help you remove those obstacles so that you can thrive, because you have a right to thrive as well, excuse me, as a person in this world.
Great, thank you. And I know you can talk for hours on that topic, Gwen.
Absolutely.
So it's a great summary. What else have we got here? When challenging clients in a coaching session about their thinking or actions they may take, what do I need to be mindful of? Does challenging seem confrontational to neurodivergent clients?
So that is a string question. In other words, it's a person specific thing. What you need to do as a neurodivergent inclusive coach is contract about challenging from the beginning. It's in my initial, when we sit down for our initial session, I will say, what does challenge mean to you? What do you like challenge to look like? Do I need to be aware of something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which is an experience that many neurodivergent people experience? Do we need to check on this day to day? So is it that sometimes you can accept really blunt challenge, and other times you need softy, and so we need to check in with each session. Is it that you need me to be blunter than blunt so that you get what I'm saying? We need to contract around that in the beginning. Does that mean that they might have a reaction in the coaching session? Sure. Just like anybody else. Feelings are just feelings. They're just information. So we're not trying to wrap them in cotton wool and protect them from any sort of feeling that they might have. We're just trying to make sure that that challenge is done in a way that can be received by them as helpful, and then to work with them with whatever comes up after that.
Thank you, Gwen. There's so many great questions. I'll just do this last one, and then do you come along to that live Q&A, even if you have other questions that you want to share, and we've got a bit more space there. So someone asked me a question. So I'm a newly qualified coach and have two neurodiverse children, now young adults. Being a parent is wonderful, but it does have its triggers. I'd love to specialize in neurodiversity coaching, but concerned for my own boundaries. How have you managed this?
Very well sometimes, and sometimes not so great. We have to remember as coaches, we're people too, right? So there may be days that I bring home emotions from my coaching practice. I'm heavily boundaried with my clients. That's not so hard, not so easy with my kids. But what we do is I like to go by the 80% rule. So if I'm getting it right 80% of the time with my family at home, then I'm doing okay. And the other 20% is just an opportunity to teach them how to repair. We give ourselves some grace and we notice what happens within us. And honestly, we get our own coaches. We need to practice what we preach. I have a coach, and she helps me through a lot of different experiences that I go through, because I do experience rejection sensitivity. I do experience, pushing myself to burnout. I do experience many things. So I take care of myself as a person. I self-coach myself to say, where do my boundaries need to lie? And then I do my best to hold to them, and I give myself some grace when I can. So that's what I would say about that.
So thank you, everybody. We do need to close the session now. Apologies we haven't managed to get to all of your questions, but I think it's an absolutely brilliant sign of how important and love this topic is. So thank you for joining us here this morning. Thank you for supporting Gwen in the chat. And we do have another session coming up on the hour, so do hold on for that one. Any parting words from you, Gwen?
Just that I encourage you to hold on to the day. Today is going to be amazing. There's so much great content. I've seen a lot of it. I'm so excited to be here. I'm geeking out. But just to let you know that you're met here with gratitude. Thank you so much for showing up in this space to learn how to show up better for neurodivergent people. So yeah.
Thank you, everybody.